Hey, 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 it's your girl, your favorite paralegal, aka Cassandra Lynn, coming to you guys today with part two of Mr. Sean Puffy Combs. As we all know, this is the 10th essay case against him involving some excruciating, hard evidence, and no pun intended, when it comes to these allegations against him. This latest one was filed by Miss Adria, I believe English, who was a former adult entertainer. And as we discussed in part one, there was some things that she gotten into, um, as instructed by Diddy based off of her past history as being an adult entertainer. And she has made, several allegations, not just Diddy, but also Vibe magazine, Jacob the jeweler, so on and so forth. We did see a mention of Trey Songz in there and Chris Breezy. And, these are just her comparing, um, you know, her case to a slew of cases that has happened or preceded this particular case. But what struck me for the past couple of days, and I know I haven't been on because work does call, is that she has made a list of demands, um, in this particular complaint. And I cannot wait to get to them. I did not want to spoil them for myself or for you guys. So we're definitely going to get into that. But as I've been reading a couple of these complaints and petitions, not just for her particular, but Combs and Kanye West and so on and so forth. They ask for normal things like court cost or damages, so on and so forth. But the demand I was seeing, like on TMZ and things of that nature, this girl, it makes you think that she was a I don't even know if I want to say this, but a plant, meaning that Diddy allegedly forced her to file this to kind of throw everybody else's claims out the window, if that makes sense. But y'all, let's hop into it and see what we can dig into on this one. So I'm gonna actually make this a little bit bigger so everybody can see how I want to do this. Let's do it like that. Okay, without further ado, let's get into it. So this is where we left off. Um, Trafficking and Victims Protection Act. So here what they're just trying to do is show how her case is involved in Trafficking and Victims Protection Act. So like what are some of the things that happened that would fall under this act? So, according to plaintiff, she was transported from New York to Florida throughout by the defendant Combs for the purposes of engaging in these activities. Going back into what we read previously, we all know her and her then boyfriend, I believe he was actually a model for Sean John while she was employed. And y'all can't see me doing the quotations, but I'm doing the quotations. While she was employed, the white parties. And from what we have read, the first two times there wasn't really anything going, although she did mention her doing certain with certain individuals. But anywho's, um, and then at that third white party, she was dressed in different attire and she had to engage in things that she didn't feel comfortable engaging, but yet she did get paid. So anywho's, uh, so for her being transported from New York to Florida, that is going to be considered as trafficking and performing those acts. Plaintiff asserts during this time, plaintiff was forced to engage in that type of work and perform certain acts to the pleasure of and the behest of defendant Combs. Between 2006 to 2009, defendant Combs forced plaintiff to engage in I call them lady of the night activities at his home in Hampton, New York and Miami, Florida. Plaintiff asserts that defendants Vibe and PMC were involved in defendants Combs' organized trafficking enterprise. Plaintiff asserts that defendant Vibe and PMC's involvement in the enterprise included provided defendant Combs resources like intentionally and falsely marketing and promoting defendant Combs' white parties in its publications as a profile networking and social event in an effort to deceive the real intent of the event, which was to further Combs and his various business, including BBE, SGC, CGE, and Vibe and PMC profits. And okay, so, this is pretty much self-explanatory, but what they're pretty much saying is that Vibe and PMC wasn't aware of what happened at these white parties. So, if they never would have advertised these high-profile parties, then, and I can't even say nothing would have happened. It doesn't matter if there was 10 people there or if there was 200 people there. I think the same agenda that Combs allegedly had would have still happened. But I'm seeing where they're going this saying like, okay, you guys took part of this because you advertised these white parties. Makes sense. In furtherance of defendant's illegal enterprise, defendants Vibe and PMC ensured defendant Combs and his business BBE, SGC, and CG appeared overwhelming in its magazine, be it on covers and pages inside defendant's magazine, featuring pages dedicated to defendant Combs personally or his businesses. Hmm. Plaintiff believes defendant Vibe and PMC engaged in defendant Combs' price to increase his visibility and profitability of his publication, Vibe magazine, through the magazine's constant affliction and relationship with defendant Combs. Plaintiff seeks justice against all defendants for trafficking. So not just Combs, but Jacob the jeweler, Tomika that Thomas, I believe that's her name, Vibe magazine. So everybody who's listed as a defendant seeking justice from all of them. Next section, claims related to plaintiff picture and likeness. On or around Labor Day 2004, I graduated from college that year. Plaintiff's picture was taken while in her employment capacity as defendant white party in Hampton, New York. Plaintiff did not know her picture was being taken for or would be used for, nor was plaintiff consent sought or given. Plaintiff has never entered into any agreement with the defendant to license her likeness, nor was it in a term for employment at the white party. Defendant and PMC intentionally mislabeled plaintiff as a guest at the white party in this magazine to further conceal the true intentions of the event and plaintiff's employee at the event in an effort to further the goals of the defendant's illegal criminal enterprise. Defendant Vibe and PMC exploited plaintiff's likeness in their November 2006 magazine, where defendant Combs was the cover, and the story was about defendant's white parties, which by this point was a cultural phenomenon. And as you can see, there's Diddy and you know what? I cannot remember these magazines, but I do remember seeing Diddy on a lot of Vibe magazines. It makes you wonder. Plaintiff's unauthorized, non consensual, and infringing use of her picture and likeness appeared on page one of the magazine. So she's saying, hey, the contract that I signed, it didn't say anything about y'all taking my picture and using my picture and putting it in a magazine. But then again, this lady was in the adult entertainment business, and I'm sure that they advertised, but that's another different story. Plaintiff did not discover the infringement use until approximately April 2024. So what she is saying that she did not know that her picture was out there until this year. I'm gonna keep reading. This, infring- this infringing use without limitation products synonyms with defendant Combs, including the White Party and defendants BBE, SGC, and CGE. Plaintiff is readily and easily identifiable in the infringing use, and her picture and likeness is prominently displayed in defendant's 5 and PMC publication. The aforementioned act violates plaintiff's right to privacy via misappropriation. Defendant has never given any defendant a release to use likeness in any publication or platforms, media and format, digital or otherwise. In November 2006, issue of the defendant's 5 and PMC is still readily available for sale and viewable online. At all relevant times, plaintiff had the sole and exclusive right to uh, the right of publicity with regards to the use of her picture, ports. Some of this is cut off. Likeness under the New York state law and common law of publicity. Defendants have, without plaintiff's authorization or consent, since used plaintiff's likeness for advertising and other trade purposes without consent and without a license to promote defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, and PMC products for the commercial gain. Plaintiff is further informed and believes and thereon alleges that defendants Vibe and PNC used plaintiff's likeness in its magazine nationwide, including in this district. Woo wee. Yeah. So long story short, it was sold all over the United States of America, and her picture was in it, and she did not authorize it. None of the defendants at this point had a license for the use of plaintiff's picture and likeness to promote the white parties. At no point did now I do want to say this here is a strong allegation because you really have to prove that magazine and whatever was it, PMC, that their sole agenda was to promote these. All we know is just a magazine with, like we see on the internet now, news stories, what's coming out, juicy stories. That's what we know when we was purchasing Vibe magazine. So they really have to prove to the court, to the judge, to the jury that Vibe magazine and PMC was solely selling these magazines, especially with Diddy section in there, to promote these white parties. They really have to prove that, and I'm really interested on how they are going to do that. At no point did plaintiff authorize, consent to, or otherwise seek to allow the defendants or any of them to exploit her picture, image, or likeness as seen in the infringing use in any manner. I swear I can't talk tonight. Plaintiff is informed and believes that and alleges that defendants and each of them engaged in the unauthorized exploitation and appropriation of plaintiff's photograph, image, picture, and likeness by prominently featuring plaintiff in an advertisement and marketing materials for defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, and CGE on various online platforms and physical material, including but not limited to the infringing use. Plaintiff is informed that thereon alleges that defendants and each of them engage in an unauthorized exploitation and misappropriation of plaintiff's photograph, image, picture, and likeness in an effort to further and continue their corrupt and drug trafficking organization. Through their general business partnership and financial support of defendant Combs, defendants Vibe and PMC aided and abetted defendant Combs' actions as herein. Defendant's publication and distribution of the infringing use has resulted in substantial injury to the plaintiff. All right, so pretty much everything that I've just read and from part one, just kind of over the factual allegations and how each party played a part and how each of the activities that took place applied to trafficking or infringement, so on and so forth. All right. So now we're getting into the first cause of action. This is what she is suing them for. All right, this is the first cause of action. So, conduct and participate in a Rico enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity, a violation of Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organization Act, code at 18 of the USC, section 1962A and C through D. And this is against all the defendants that were listed in the case style. All right, so let's see what we got here. So pretty much everything that they are alleging previous paragraphs apply here. So we have defendants Vibe and PMC are 100% liable for the of defendant Combs, and by extension, BBE, SGC, CGE, and Thomas are the known as the Rico orchestrators. Defendants Vibe and PNC financially benefited from defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, and CGE through their partnership with defendant Combs and the brand that he owned, listed as the defendants above. The collective, all of them, provided the Rico orchestrators with unfettered access to resources and failed to adequately investigate, supervise, and or monitor how those resources were being used, who was using those resources, and the purpose of the use of those resources. So what they're saying is Vibe and PMC should have made sure that Diddy and his other affiliates, Bad Boys Entertainment, Sean John, all of them, Vibe and PMC should have made sure that when they are doing these publications, it went to advertise or market the white parties. Because what did the white parties do? They brought upon trafficking and infringement and all this other stuff, but so it's really about the trafficking part because of the activities that went on at these white parties. So because Vibe financially supported them, they should have monitored Diddy's activities. How you do that, I don't know. I mean, not unless you put it in a contract and say, hey, we're giving you this. This is what you do with the money. This is what you don't do with the money. Yeah, I don't ever see that happening in a contract ever. I'm actually going to try to see if I can find a contract, and we're going to read over that to see what these partnerships consist of, and it's probably specifically with Vive and Combs. I want to see if I can find that one. But yeah, support provided by defendant Thomas. So mind you, defendant Thomas was like the Ghislaine Maxwell of Jeffrey Epstein. She was the one that was like her, how can I say this? His personal assistant. Just like the KK lady that is in the most recent Plaintiff Rodney Jones lawsuit, how she was the chief of staff, and she was making sure that everybody had their fanny pack with, you know, Diddy's alleged for that day. This is who defended Thomas was earlier, back in that earlier time. So the support provided by defendant Thomas, Jacob the Jeweler, BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, and PMC was a lifetime that spearheaded and maintained the orchestrators' depraved actions. Upon information and belief, the establishment of a business relationship with a prominent publication, C. and Combs allowed for the distribution platform for all defendant Combs' business endeavors to disguise his true intention with broad and vague in nature description of activities. Defendants Vibe and PMC knew or should have known that defendants Cone, BBE, SGC, and CGE had no intention to utilize the resources he received for business related purposes, and they did not put any mechanism in place to ensure that their resource, specifically their publication, were not being used for any illegal activity. Defendants Vibe and PMC willful blindness resulted in plaintiff suffering the harm detailed herein. Defendants are individuals and entities within the meaning of person as defined in that section, because each is capable of holding and does hold a legal or beneficial interest in property. The association is composed of defendants Combs, BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, PMC, Thomas, Jacob Jeweler, John and Jane Does 1 through 10, and organizational Does 1 through 10. So each of those people had uh, a interest in this particular magazine and each other, period. Ooh, and this breaks down what the hearing activity is. Remind you, this Rico first cause of action is involving all of the defendants. So, what is racketeering activity? As defined by the 18 U.S. Code in 1968, it is any act or threat involving unaliving, kidnapping, gambling, arson, robbery, bribery, extortion, dealing in an obscene matter, or dealing in a controlled substance or listed chemical, which is chargeable under state law and punishable by imprisonment for more than 1 year. B, any act which is indictable under any of the following provisions of Title 18, the United States Code, Section 933, relating to trafficking in firearms, Section 1341, relating to mail fraud. Let me see. They bolded the sections that it relates to. Section 1461 and 1465, relating to obscene matter. Section 1511, relating to the obstruction of state or local law enforcement. 1581 to 1592, relating in peonage, slavery and trafficking in persons. Section 1952, relating to racketeering. I think that's so the ones in bold, really what they want you to relate what they have done. This is the activities, the racketeering activities that they took part in. Section 1962A makes it unlawful for any person who has received any income derived directly or indirectly from a pattern of racketeering activity, or through a collection of unlawful debt in which such person has participated as a principal within the meaning of Section Title 18 of the United States Code, to use or invest directly and indirectly any part of such income, or the proceeds of such income in the acquisition of any interest in or the establishment or operations of any enterprise which is engaged in, or the activities of which affect interstate or foreign commerce. It makes it unlawful for any person employed by or associated with any enterprise engaged in, or the activities of which affect interstate or foreign commerce, to conduct or participate, directly or indirectly, in the conduct of such enterprise affairs through a pattern of racketeering activity. 1962D makes it lawful for any person to conspire to violate Section 1962A and C. Oh, man. Let me see. I'm gonna get down to what matters. So they're saying that many acts by defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, C, Thomas, Jacob the Jeweler, Does 1 through 10, organization Does 1 through 10, all of those acts that was performed by them were prohibited under um, 18 of the United States Code, Section 1962. Defendants have unlawfully increased their profits by luring and deceiving individuals such as Plaintiff to their organization for the misstated purpose of using their talents as entertainment. Defendants' true intentions are later revealed through a calculated grooming scheme that involves false promise business opportunities, exposure to high-level celebrity individuals, including President Donald Trump. We're going to get into him too. Reverend Al Sharpton And Paris Hilton, music mogul Jay-Z, and music executives like Russell Simmons, Irv Gotti, Steve Stout, Andre Harrell, and Loyal, with the promise of introductions, networking, fame, and fortune, which quickly shifts to unauthorized drugging, threats, and trafficking. We seen this in Rodney Jones case, where he said, what did Diddy, well, allegedly Diddy was saying, hey, I know Stevie J, if you do this, then, I can get you that, and I can buy you an island, and so on and so forth, just making all these promises. Even in this particular petition, he was promising the boyfriend, I can get you a Sean John, have you be a model and you get this and this. Same thing with her. But at a point of time, it's like you do have to know exactly what you're getting yourself into, especially with how she got to be employed, with the white. Well, I don't even think she knew she was doing the white parties, but this man asked you and your man to do this. And if you do this, then you can have this. And then you're going to take a job doing this. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Oh, oh man. And here we go. Look at this. Boy, you know what? Donald Trump is a was a man. I'm not even gonna lie to you, but now that all of this stuff is, look at Russell Simmons. Now that all of this stuff is coming out, and I'm trying to balance work and doing this, but it's so much that is connected in this industry. Just like, okay, I'm seeing Diddy with Donald Trump. Donald Trump was boys with Epstein. They both had a case together where, and I'm not gonna spill the beans on that, but it's like, okay, Donald Trump is saying, hey, Epstein is cool. That's my best pal, so on and so forth. But yet, y'all have a case with somebody suing you guys for SA, and it's deeper than that. And now Diddy's being sued in multiple cases for SA. How deep does the rabbit hole go? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And Russell Simmons, he just said, bye, y'all. He skedaddled. Oh man, look at Heavy D. You got some in it, man. See, ooh, and just like what is that dude's name? Mark Rubin or whoever that just he does the white parties too. And when I after I read this doing part one, and then I seen a couple of days ago that old dude had white party, I'm thinking in my head, what really goes on at that white party? Because I seen Drake there, I seen Kim Kardashian there. I'm just like, I'm side eyeing everybody. Jay-Z, Mary J. Look at old girl right there. Al Sharpton. That's like a Reverend T.D. Jakes over there. Baby, I'm side eyeing everybody. Yeah, Puffy was actually he was yeah, they had a whole section in there. That's wild. All right, let's get back into it. While employed by defendant Combs at the white parties, plaintiff witnessed defendant Combs instruct direct defendant Thomas and other employees to acquire and transport the illicit narcotics. Plaintiff personally witnessed defendant Thomas transport illicit narcotics to and from the white parties in New York and Florida. Now that's where you get the trafficking part with it, drug trafficking, crossing state lines. Plaintiff personally witnessed defendant Combs ingest and distribute the illicit narcotic. I don't know why this is blanked out, but the illicit narcotic once he received them. Plaintiff personally witnessed and was directed by defendant Combs to engage in work while employed as an entertainer at the white parties. Plaintiff was to engage in activities with attendees at the white parties when instructed by defendant Combs or Thomas. Plaintiff would be paid cash for complying with the demands for the work, and there was no negotiation between plaintiff and either defendant Combs, Thomas, or the party receiving services regarding a price to be paid for complying with the demands. So at the parties, you were to do these type of acts and you couldn't negotiate how much to charge for those acts. Honestly, the first time they would say, "Hey, you got to do this," I'm gone. I am so gone. Y'all can have it. It's I'm not about to sell my soul just to get this. It's not happening. The Rico enterprise activities affected interstate commerce is comprised of an association of persons, including each defendant and other unnamed co-conspirators herein. That association was structured by various agreements, deals, contracts, and non-contractual relationships between the defendant, by which defendants assume different roles and knowingly, indirectly, or indirectly participating in the acts necessary to carry out the directives of the enterprise, which was to acquire and distribute narcotics, ladies of the night, and workers. Defendants also work collectively to deceptively obtain the labor of models and entertainers, such as Plaintiff and Mr. Gallo, to utilize their talent to produce tangible goods and services without full compensation. That right there is just that's saying that these people would do any and everything because they saw the end game, or the end goal rather. They know that any pennies on the dollars do this. I'm willing to do whatever it is to get that modeling contract or to get into the music industry. So using them pretty much with these fake promises. As detailed herein, plaintiff worked for defendant Combs for several years. My God. Additionally, plaintiff's then boyfriend, Mr. Gallo, was also employed by one of defendant Combs' businesses, defendant Sean John Company. Employment defendant Thomas solicited plaintiff via Gallo to work for defendant Combs at his white parties as entertainment. Plaintiff was never allowed to negotiate a rate for her employment with Mr. Combs. In fact, plaintiff agreeing to employment with defendant Combs was a condition precedent to Gallo gaining his employment with the defendant Combs as a model with defendant SGC. So pretty much, if she never would have accepted employment at the white parties, her boyfriend wouldn't have been a model for Sean John. That's sad. Plaintiff fulfilled the condition precedent by providing services of work demanded by defendant Combs at his white parties. Defendant Combs benefited from plaintiff's forced work, did not compensate plaintiff fairly, and ultimately blackballed plaintiff and Mr. Geyer once she no longer covered. Oh wait, defendants. Oh yeah, once she no longer cowered. That's a that's the correct word to use, that to defendants Combs' demand for continued participation. So pretty much she didn't bow down. She didn't bow down. Defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, PMC, Thomas Jacob, all of those defendants are all share a common purpose, which was to use deception, coercion, force, and the threat of violence to enrich themselves at the expense of the individuals like plaintiff. As set forth herein, although all defendants may not have directly threatened, coerced, forced, or violently threatened plaintiff, they financially benefited from defendants Combs, BBE, SGC, and all those other defendants' scheme of defrauding and intimidating the plaintiff with threats of destitution and isolation from the music and entertainment industry, which defendant made good on, as there is no evidence, none whatsoever, of Mr. Gallo Sean John's campaign available, and both plaintiff and Mr. Gallo were effectively banned from the industry after plaintiff refused to continue her employment at those white parties. There were also fake promises of a music career, guaranteed access to future exclusive celebrity events, fame, and fortune. So all of this was promised to them if they pretty much worked doing whatever Combs say. For him, I swear it is a sense of control. He has to be in control. It's like he has your life at the palm of his hands, and he can, like Thanos, he can make a snap and things will either disappear or things will be good for you. That's his new name. His new name is Thanos. And it is reasonable to believe defendants Combs, BBE, all those defendants would not have engaged in these acts or threats but for the existence of the RICO scheme and their understanding that they would have unfettered access to engage in their illegal and corrupt enterprise without question. As as evidence in plaintiff's complaint, I can't even talk. As evidence in plaintiff's defendants all orchestrated, participated, managed, and executed the RICO enterprise. Defendant Combs, Thomas, and Doe's purchased and distributed illegal narcotics to employees and guests at the white parties. Defendants transported narcotics by flying on commercial airlines from New York to Florida and distributed the narcotics to guests of the white party and or to defendant Combs directly. The RICO enterprise has functioned as a continuing unit, maintains an insertable structure, separated and distinct from the pattern of racketeering activity. This is the second case in this jurisdiction where Combs has accused of engaging in racketeering, and both cases have similar fact patterns and descriptions of racketeering activities. Defendant Combs has a pattern of making false representations and omissions to entertainers who use their talents to provide services to the enterprise. These false representations and omissions were designed to induce people like the plaintiff to utilize their talents and labors to provide entertainment and engage in forced work service without full compensation. Entertainers like plaintiff were also forced to solicit and participate in encounters with guests of the white parties as part of their employment capacities. Entertainers like plaintiff were also required to purchase and distribute narcotics. As further part of the enterprise, defendant Combs require entertainers like plaintiff wearing clothing provided by defendant Combs so that she could easily be identified as a worker by the party goers. Additionally, defendant Combs used the prospects of a music career, participating in future right parties, and meeting influential music industry executive, coupled with threats to blackball plaintiff and her then boyfriend if they did not comply with defendant Combs' demands. This pattern of false accusation, oh, I'm sorry, of false representations was disseminated to plaintiff in Florida and New York. The decimation typically used interstate telephone wires. So that means that, he would call and say, "Hey, you don't do this, this is what's going to happen." Oh my gosh. The true nature of the enterprise was left undisclosed, was omitted, and or was affirmatively misrepresented to all fraudulent increase defendants' profits, at least some of which were used to expand the enterprise, causing further injury to plaintiff and possibly many others. Yeah, all this reading got me just jumbling up my words. I promise y'all I can read. Upon information and belief, defendant profited from the enterprise and plaintiff suffered because the enterprise diminished plaintiff's finances for non-payment of services rendered and diminished plaintiff's health through consistent drugging and forced encounters as a trafficking victim. Defendant used proceeds from the enterprise to advance the enterprise by funding and operating their marketing machine, including those through the use of mail magazines, word of mouth, and interest wires to sell the illusion that the Combs was a serious and legitimate businessman who held exclusive networking events that would allow entertainers the opportunity to maximize their skills in the entertainment industry when nothing could be further from the truth. So they're alleging that he was advertising these parties as a big networking event, when in reality it was a lot of relation activities and taking narcotics, just a big old party. Definitive Vibe and PMC were direct participate in the marketing aspect of the scheme, as in one issue of Vibe magazine, November 2006, Defendant Combs received an astonishing 15 pages of advertisement, including the cover of the magazine. That's why the centerfold cover and two direct two-page advertisements for Defendant Combs' other enterprises with CGE, including clothing, liquor, and cologne, called Unforgettable. Unforgivable. He's about to be unforgettable. The tagline for Unforgivable cologne was, "A life without passion is unforgettable." Unforgivable. Who knew Defendant Combs' true passion was being the head of a corrupt organization that abused women and trafficked, that word, and narcotics? Man, this is sad. We grew up on these magazines. We really grew up on these magazines. The two-page Unforgivable cologne advertisement featuring Kamora Lee Simmons. Yeah, she got away. Hey, is that the dude? I wonder if that's the dude. And look at that. You know what? I have a bottle down the drain. And it was a gift. I don't even know why somebody gave it to me, because I don't even like to drink like that. Sean John campaigns featuring Defendant Combs' son, Justin Combs. Shadows of Defendant Combs used to humanize him in the furtherance of the conspiracy. Oh man, he put baby in there. Oh man. Multiple covers of Defendant Combs for Defendant's Five magazines. Hey, Biggie. I remember this one. I remember that one. Mm. Defendant Combs with Jennifer Lopez on world tour. Hey, J Lo said bye. She ain't never. All right, these are just covers. To reiterate, Defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, and CGE appeared in 18-page cover of Defendant's Vibe and PMC publications, Vibe magazine, and single issue. Defendants provided the general public at large this misrepresentative I can't even talk information, including over interstate wireline communication systems via their nationwide publishing, Vibe magazine, which is available in print and online. Upon information and belief, defendants obtained revenue via wire transfers, documents, and banking transactions that were exchanged via electronic means over interstate wires, thereby growing the enterprise and causing further injury to plaintiff as described throughout. So, as these magazines are going out, being sold, advertising for these white parties, folks is getting paid for it via transfers. So that financially supported Combs to do whatever it is he wanted to do at those white parties. So it's like a cycle. Is a cycle. He keep putting out, content. They keep publishing it. People are buying it and they're advertising, and then people are reading it and say, "Ooh, it's a white party. Let me go to the white party." And then they do these things at the white party and it starts all over again. Defendant's scheme was reasonably calculated to deceive plaintiff of ordinary prudence and comprehension through the execution of their complex and illegal scheme to misrepresent true purpose of employment at Defendant Combs' white parties, and that employment at those white parties would not and could not lead to a career in the music industry, fame, nor fortune. So you spent several years working at these white parties and nothing happened. I'm telling you now, I'll give you a good couple of months. if I don't see it going good nowhere, I'm out. Plaintiff would never have engaged in any regard with defendant Combs for 5 years, if not but for the complex and illegal racketeering scheme operated by defendants. Upon information and belief, defendant each had this specific intent to participate in overall RICO activities. I'm sorry, RICO and the plan scheme to defraud plaintiff, and each participated in the enterprise as follows. So now they're telling you how each of them uh, participated in the RICO activities. So, upon information and belief, defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, and PMC control and participate in these activities of the enterprise in a variety of ways as set forth herein, including but not limited to developing marketing campaigns to legitimize the white parties as a way to integrate hip hop into echelons of the mega rich, to find an intersection of both worlds for uh, the sake of unity. Upon information and belief throughout the relevant period, Vibe and PMC enter into a partnership agreement with defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, and CGE. Business partners, each member is responsible for the partner's actions in the partnership. Defendant Vibe and PMC have an ethical obligation to ensure that business partner defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, and were not using the partnership to engage in illegal activity. Defendant Vibe and PMC provided resources to the general business partners, defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, and CGE. Defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, and CGE used the resources provided by the general business partners to solicit through mail, World Wide Web, and telephone entertainers whom they would promise music careers, modeling careers, and meeting with a powerful, powerful music industry executives. Defense and his staff, including defendant Thomas and Doe's, would solicit entertainers into residing in New York and Florida. Defendants Combe and his staff, including defendant Thomas, Vibe, PMC, and Doe's, relied on the mail, the World Wide Web, and telephone to disseminate the misleading information described here. Defendants Combs, BBE, SGC, CGE, Thomas, Vibe, PMC did not disclose to the individuals they solicited the fact that they would be drugged, required to act as workers, and forced to perform without compensation. Defendants authorized the resources to their general business partner, defendant Combs. In furtherance of the goals and the conspiracy, defendant Vibe and PMC used the white parties as a ruse to provide defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, and SGE cover to disguise their covert trafficking enterprise. Throughout the relevant period, defendant Combs, BBE, SGE, and CGE used the resources their general business partners provided to solicitors. As detailed throughout, they relied on the mail, the email, and the World Wide Web to disseminate, disseminate the misleading information described herein and profit from the free labor of these entertainers. So, if I'm not mistaken, out to people by mail, by email, by the internet, and that's how they recruited. And they promised them all these things so that way they can get them to work for free or little to nothing. That's wild. In addition to the forced free labor, they use their power and influence to force these entertainers to engage in activities and engage in unwanted encounters with friends and associates of the RICO enterprise. Defendants also use their power and influence to enforce these entertainers to purchase, transport, and distribute illegal narcotics. As a general business partner of defendant Combs, BBE, SGC, and CGE, defendants Vibe and PMC are equally liable for the commission of these acts. Upon information belief, defendant Thomas ensured the cash payments to employees like Plaintiff. Plaintiff was never given the opportunity to directly negotiate the fees for forced work outside of her employment and would typically be at her sole discretion of defendant Thomas Grace for the payment of the work. And when I say the work. Plaintiff does not recall receiving appropriate United States federal tax documents for payments, or if they independently declare these payments on their taxes. It is unclear if defendants BBE, SGC, CGE, Jacob, Vibe, or PMC, they're supposed to say PMC, not PNC, uh, requested an audit to defendant Combs' business financial records to ensure the resources provided to defendant Combs were not being used for fund illegal activities like that and drug trafficking. So it's very interesting. Um, I have a minor in finance, but I really haven't, got into because I always wanted to do corporate finance, corporate law, corporate finance. And I do know that whoever usually businesses get audited and they go over your books, your balance sheets and things of that nature to kind of see where your funds are being allocated. So we don't know it's here. I don't think the plaintiff would have known if that was being done. Um, but she just knows that she never received her W-2 form or her 1099. And if that's the case, did Diddy and them actually report this money to, the government? That's a whole different case right there. During the 10 years preceding the filing of this action and to the present, all defendants did cooperate jointly and serve in the commissions of the predicate. Yeah, some of the letters in the words are cut out, so I'm just severally in the commission of predicate acts itemized in uh, 18 USC section 1961. Let me see. Let's go. So pretty much in the 10 years, defendants knew, willfully, unlawfully participated in the patterns of racketeering events. The racketeering acts followed the same pattern and purpose to defraud the plaintiff for the defendant's benefit. Each activity involved the same or similar methods of commission and participants. Defendant's business would not have succeeded without the repeated predicate acts and ability to conduct their fraud using mail, telecommunication wires, interstate travel, and possibly money laundering, which is not far fetched considering defendant Jacob was sentenced to 30 months for activities related to money laundering and required to forfeit over $2 million in civil penalties and fees. Good grief. Oh man, Jacob the jeweler, what? The racketeering act relates to each other in that they were part of a concerted actions by defendants to use the endorsements and channels of the enterprise to operate their business to solicit potential victims as described herein. The separate racketeering acts all relate to each other in a way. They were part of concerted actions by defendants to use the endorsement and channels the enterprise to operate their businesses to fraudulently induce plaintiff and other like plaintiff to utilize their talents and labors to provide service without full compensation. In addition to the forced free labor, defendants use their power and influence to force plaintiff to engage in relations and unwanted encounters with others when directed. Defendant, specifically defendant Combs, uses power and influence to force plaintiff to engage in that type of work, but also distributed and consume illegal narcotics. Defendant's wrongful conduct has injured plaintiff remaining part of defendant's ongoing business practices and continues to threaten plaintiff and the public. Defendant's association with the enterprise enables defendants to direct and control a pattern of fraudulent, illegal activities over a substantial number of years, which continues to this day. As we have seen the most recent cases that, has gone on, and we don't know how many other cases is even out there. That's the sad part. And I've always said, I think that this is way bigger than Diddy. Diddy got caught, but it's way bigger than any of us can imagine. He's just going down, but I think it's about to open up a whole rabbit hole. To further their collective goals, defendant worked in concert to engage in the various forms of criminal activity, including forcing individuals into work by forcing to solicit and engage in encounters with others and to consume and distribute illegal narcotics at the direction and demand of defendant Combs. Defendant's ongoing racketeering activity has injured and continues to injure plaintiff. Defendant patterns of forcing plaintiff and others like plaintiff to engage in work and engage in encounters with others and to purchase, transport, and distribute illegal narcotics was the proximate cause of the injuries suffered by the plaintiff. Man, and this is still under the first cause of action. Man, I might have to do a part three. So the next action is just talking about defendants committed multiple acts of trafficking, which is a violation. It was either by force, fraud, or coercion, and this furthered the prize. Let's see what we can go through here. No, excuse me. All right, so defendants knowingly affected interstate commerce by recruiting, enticing, harboring, and transporting, providing, obtaining, advertising, maintaining, patronizing, and soliciting by any means a person, plaintiff, to engage acts and work. In addition to violating federal laws, these acts violate following statutes. Not only does it violate federal laws, but also the state of Florida and the state of New York. The feds is about to have a field day. All of these civil cases that we see are coming out, the feds can use that in their case. That is the beauty of it. So as these cases start going into discovery and any evidence, any interrogatories, questions that they require for each party to have to answer, those responses, they can be used. The documents that they request, those can be used. The videos, anything that has came out in discovery has been used for evidence can not only help these civil cases but also the federal cases, which is the beauty of it. As detailed throughout this complaint, defendants BBE, SGC, CGE, Jacob, Vibe, and PMC provided a resources to defendant Combs through their general business partnerships, and we already know that. And they knowingly benefited financially or by receiving anything of value. That actually was a violation of the United States Federal Code. Um, Defendants. So these defendants, through defendant Combs, violated this code, advertised in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, or coercion that was described in that section. Um, and such means will be used to cause plaintiff to engage several of these commercial acts. By way of example, so they're giving you example how he violated these laws, not just by the federal side, but both New York and Florida. In the summer of 2007, plaintiff was forced to engage in work at the White Party at defendant Combs' home in Hampton, New York, with defendant Jacob. The picture included in this pleading of defendant Jacob and plaintiff was taken after plaintiff was forced to engage in illegal defendant Jacob at his behest and demand of defendant Combs. I'm not scrolling back up, but remember she was smiling in, and I'm like, if I was forced to have, any type of relations with somebody, I'm not going to be smiling in a picture, but that is just me. That is just me. Defendant Combs forced plaintiff to have relations with defendant Jacob against her will. According to plaintiff, defendant Combs required work and engaged in acts as part of the employment at the white parties. Plaintiff was only paid for her services at the party, but not for the work she was forced to engage in. So yeah, I get that. If you're not reading and you're just listening, so she was paid for being at the party, but she wasn't paid for doing the relation part of that she was forced into do. Between 2004 and 2009, plaintiff was forced by defendant Combs and Thomas to transport herself to Combs' home in Miami, Florida. Plaintiff, upon information believes there may be videos showing her being assaulted while unconscious during the white parties at the defendant Combs' Florida residence. I bet they're gonna find if they have not already gone through that. I think they find years and years and years of videos because the one on the street Diddy like to record himself in everywhere he's at. He likes to record. From at least 2004 through 2009 in the states of New York and Florida and possibly elsewhere, defendant Combs and others known and unknown in affecting interstate commerce knowingly combined, conspired, confederated, and agreed to recruit, entice, harbor, transport, provide, obtain, and maintain by any means a person, and to benefit financially and by receiving anything of value from participation in an enterprise which has engaged in such knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud and corrosion, and a combination of such means would be used to cause the person plaintiff to engage in commercial acts, to wit, defendant Combs, Jacob, and unknown, cause plaintiff to engage in commercial relations in the cities of Miami and New York by means of force, threats of force, fraud, and corrosion in a combination of such means. This is how it not only violates United States Code, but also the penal codes in Florida and New York. In furtherance, the conspiracy and to effect the illegal object thereof, the following overt acts, among others, were committed in the state of New York and Florida. So now they're down there showing you what acts took place in New York, what acts took place in Florida. In or about 2004, defendant Sean Combs, through his employee defendant Thomas, recruited plaintiff to work for him as an entertainer at the white parties. Defendant promised to book plaintiff then boyfriend in the Sean John clothing campaign he auditioned for as a model, make plaintiff artist, and introduce plaintiff to an ultra exclusive group of high profile and to further her career in the entertainment industry. In 2005, after plaintiff's second white party, defendant Combs began more aggressively grooming plaintiff into engaging in that type of work. Defendant Combs directed plaintiff with whom to engage in that type of work and would give approval and congratulations after plaintiff complied with defendant Combs' demands. As part of his grooming of plaintiff, threatened that if the plaintiff did not continue her employment at the white parties, that defendant Combs would be blackballed, would blackball plaintiff from the entertainment industry and plaintiff then boyfriend Mr. Gallo from the modeling industry, which defendant Combs eventually did anyway. So he still did it. At the direction of defendant Combs and Thomas, plaintiff was forced to engage in work at defendant Combs' homes in Hampton, New York, and Miami, Florida. Plaintiff had no authority to be on defendant Combs' residential premises without defendant Combs' consent. All of defendant Combs' properties are protected by a 24-hour security, and all visitors must be verified before entry. Communicated with defendant Combs and Thomas by telephone. Defendant Combs communicated by a California number ending in 1496. What? Do they still got the freaking text messages? However, a search of that number leads to a New York based artist, Paloma Bali as a registered owner. Why or how a number registered to Miss Bali is being used by defendant Combs is another conspiracy for another time. The number plaintiff communicated with defendant Thomas is seemingly still registered to defendant Thomas. That there it could be. I don't know. You know how these days you have text now and WhatsApp and all this other stuff and also spoof. And I believe back in those days you could do that too. You could spoof somebody's number to make it show as your number. But yeah, interesting. It's just kind of showing you that okay, she actually did have messages from Nan. From 2004 to 2009, in the states of New York and Florida, defendant Combs, Thomas, and others, known and unknown, in and interstate commerce, knowingly did recruit, entice, harbor, transport, provide, obtain, and maintain by any means of person, plaintiff, and did benefit financially and by receiving anything of value from participation which has engaged in such act, knowingly and in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and a combination of such means would be used to cause the person to engage in commercial acts, to wit, defendant Combs, Thomas, Jacob caused plaintiff to engage in commercial acts utilizing force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion, and a combination of such means. Let's see. Defendant, it says additionally, defendant Combs received personal gratification by directing and ensuring plaintiff engaged in commercial acts with the individual defendant directed her to engage. Wow. 24, not 24, from 2004 2009 up to and including currently in the states of New York and Florida, defendant Combs, Thomas, and others known and unknown. All right, so this is kind of much saying the same thing. Like you guys knew that this was some unlawful activity. This one is just saying they committed multiple acts of procuring, transporting, and distributing controlled substances. So let's see. So it still violates United States Code, as well as the penal codes for New York and Florida. The Combs Rico enterprise. As detailed throughout this pleading, defendants are an enterprise as the term is defined pursuant the 18 section of the United States Code. That is a group of individuals associated, in fact, that engaged in and the activities of which affected interstate commerce. The enterprise constituted an ongoing organization. Members function as a continuing unit to achieve the enterprise's objectives. Uh, Combs Rico Enterprises were comprised of individuals who reside in Los Angeles, California, Miami, Florida. I said Los Angeles, Los Angeles, California, Miami, Florida, New York, and among other places. Members and associates of the Combs Rico Enterprises have engaged in drug trafficking as well as the other type of trafficking. Man, these complaints just I don't know if they're just copying off of each other, but they're all basically same thing. Upon information and belief, members and associates of Combs Rico's enterprise procure, transport, and distribute ecstasy, cocaine, and other illicit narcotics in and around New York and Florida. During the relevant time frame, through the General Business Partnership, provided resources to defendant Combs and furtherance of the enterprise during his highly exclusive and sought after summer white parties. Uh, the purpose of the Combs enterprise to use its position, power, and influence to control entertainers, these entertainers to purchase, transport, and distribute illegal narcotics and engage in work. To promote and enhance the prestige, reputation, and position of the enterprise with respect to rival music labels, artists, and executives. To preserve and protect the power, territory, and criminal ventures of the enterprise through the use of intimidation, tweets of violence and coercion, threats of violence and coercion. keep victims in fear of the enterprise and its members and associates, enrich the members and associates of the enterprise through criminal activity, including narcotic trafficking, the other type of trafficking, and fraud. Conceal the activities of the enterprise from law enforcement by threatening individual livelihoods if they ever spoke about the enterprise to others, especially enforcement. Law enforcement. That's when NDAs came in at. So I get why they pursuing the Rico part of it. Yeah, this is a big old enterprise. Methods and means of the enterprise. Upon information and belief among the means and methods by which the defendants and their associates and participated in the conduct and affairs of the enterprise were as follows. Members of the enterprise and their associates procured, transported, and distributed illegal narcotics to defendant Combs at his homes in New York and Florida. Plaintiff personally witnessed members of the enterprise during domestic travel. Members of the enterprise and their associates used force, coercion, threats, or a combination therein to force plaintiffs to engage in work and have relations with white party goers at the direction of defendant Combs and or Thomas. The pattern of racketeering activity through the defendants with others agreed to conduct and participate directly, indirectly in the conduct of affairs of the enterprise consisted of multiple offenses, including dealing in controlled substances, which is a violation of Title 21 of the U.S. Sections 841, 843, and 846. Parts of the conspiracy involved each defendant agreeing that the conspirator would commit at least two acts of racketeering in the conduct of the affairs of the enterprise. All right, now we heard about the mail fraud. It was like, okay, through the mail, that, it would be a violation. Well, I'm going to tell you. So, defendants voluntarily and intentionally devised and participated in a scheme with the intent to rob defendants used the mail to execute the fraudulent scheme herein. Specifically, the defendants agreed to each of these acts of mail fraud described throughout this complaint. In addition, they agreed to rely on the mail to distribute their marketing materials, Vibe magazine, secure wires, and cash payments from purchasers of the illegal and narcotics they required others to sell, distribute, and perform. In furtherance of and for purposes of executing the above described fraudulent and illegal course of conduct and scheme to defraud, defendants, either individually or in combination with themselves, used and caused to be used the U.S. mail by both placing and causing to be placed marketing material, advertisements, agreements, and other matters in depositories, and by removing or causing to be removed letters and other mailable matters from depositories in violation of the mail fraud statute of 18 of the United States Code, Section 1341. Defendants could not have furthered their fraudulent scheme without the use of mail. For example, without the mail, defendants Vibe and PMC would be unable to distribute its marketing magazine, as during the time online viewing was in the infancy. Defendants also required the mail to distribute advertisements to various states, including New York. For those reasons, the use of mail to conduct fraudulent was necessary and inevitable. Inevitable. I'm sorry. God, dog, they is getting them on every side. Now, this is where they committed multiple acts of wire fraud. So let's see. What did they do? All right, so defendants agreed to rely on interstate wires to decimate funds to others and disseminate funds to others in the enterprise. Defendants illegally acquires wire transfers to further their collective goal of furthering their Rico enterprise. Defendants knew that their purchases were illegally made. Defendants agreed that defendants should facilitate these fraudulent purchases over interstate wires and furtherance of the fraud. Plaintiff has received payment for employment and work in New York and Florida from defendant Combs and Thomas. Let's see. Of and for purposes of executing the above described fraudulent and illegal course of conduct and scheme or artifice to fraud defendants either individually or in combination with them. Okay, yeah. Da, 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 da. We already know that. Let's see. Defendants could not have furthered their fraudulent scheme without the ability to use telecommunications to share information with clients, retailers nationwide. Defendants needed to communicate with clients and retailers around the country utilizing interstate telecommunication wires to conduct the fraudulent activity, which was necessary and inevitable inevitable to use. That is a violation. Let's see. Defendants' act or omissions were actuated by actual malice and a willful and wanton disregard for the consequences suffered by plaintiff were directed towards her because of her gender and with knowledge of a high degree of probability of harm to plaintiff and reckless indifference to the consequences of their acts or omissions. Compensatory damages alone will be insufficient to deter such conduct in the future. There needs to be criminal referral to the United States Justice Department as well as the state's Attorney General's office. Wherefore, plaintiff requests that the court issue an order and grant judgments to the. Ooh. Oh yeah, yep. So this is what she is requesting the court to grant plaintiff's statutory common law and punitive damages, post judgment interest, recompense for damage, enter judgment according to the declaratory relief sought, without limitation, injunctive and equitable verdict deems just in all circumstances, and grant plaintiff an incentive or service. Y'all, I know I'm not about to. I'm not about. I'm about to. I pause because I'm like, what? Grant plaintiff an incentive or service award reflective of the work done prosecuting this action, the time spent, the effort, and hard costs invested, the results obtained in the light of the court's judgment informed by awards in other similar cases of comparable difficulty and complexity. She said an incentive or a service award reflective of the work done in prosecuting this action. Y'all, now we're going. I think I gotta put a pause there. I have to put a pause there. We in an hour 18. So come back for part 3. But I think that was a good spot right there. So she really asking for a service award or some type of to be recognized for how much she put into persecuting this man through a civil action for essaying and trafficking and all that stuff. Definitely let me know what you think about this video and that last part that I read in the comments. Okay? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned. Part 3 is going to come out soon. Okay? But we definitely got to wrap this Diddy case up. Until then, y'all be blessed. I'm out.